Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite video on the channel, the power rankings. Sunday is in the books. Well, actually, the Cubs and that are still playing, but it's the ninth inning, and I don't suspect the Cubs to come back from 6 runs. So I think I can do this a little bit early, get it out of the way. We are 5 subscribers away from hitting 100. So if you're new to the channel, please go down there, hit that subscription button. 100 is a big milestone for me. I'm super excited to get there. I know I'm going to get there the next few days, but the sooner we get there, the better. So if you're not a subscriber, please go down there and do that. Otherwise, I think we're just going to jump right into it with number 30. Not a whole lot of change here. 1-2 against Milwaukee, 1-2 against San Diego. They managed to break their big losing streak overall, and they managed to break their away on the road losing streak. But they're still last. They're still the worst record in the MLB, and realistically, don't have a whole lot going for them this season. Arizona Diamondbacks. Number 29, we've got the Baltimore Orioles, 0-3 against Houston, and then went 1-3 against Toronto this weekend. On the very least, they haven't been swept in the past couple weeks compared to the Diamondbacks, so other than that, I don't have a lot of benefits to say for them. They got Mullins, who's probably going to be the guy representing them at the All-Star game, and I think they're talking about Trey Mancini being in the home run derby, but other than that, O's are the 29th, very likely last in the division, etc. etc. Number 28, we got the Pittsburgh Pirates. They actually had a pretty good week. Went 1-1 against the Chicago White Sox and then actually beat St. Louis over the weekend. So that's them winning 2 of the last 3 series, as well as tying against the Chicago White Sox. So really, it's a pretty generous big difference here, I think. And the Pirates could potentially be moving up if they continue to play like this. They do have some young guys starting to fill some major roles on the team. Number 27, we got a new Kansas City Royals, 1-2 against Minnesota, and then getting swept over the weekend against Texas. Royals have hit an all-time low right now. Not all-time, but this season definitely they're at a low, and they're having struggles winning. Their pitching's not consistent. They're not getting the offense they really want. I think it's safe to say at this point that Kansas City is the weakest team in the Central, and they're continuing to struggle. And I don't suspect that to turn around anytime soon, to be honest. Next up, we have the Colorado Rockies, 1-1 against Seattle, which pretty good series, and then they had a rough go of it here over the weekend against Milwaukee. Milwaukee getting a little bit of revenge in the home and home from last week against Colorado. We suspected Colorado being the bottom this season, and that's exactly where they are. Next up, we got Texas Rangers, 2-2 against Oakland. Good series, interdivision series, and then they swept the Royals over the weekend. So they're working their way up. And I've been saying this all season long. The Rangers are a team that fights every night. They're always in a spot to have a chance to win. And they got Kyle Gibson, who's having a Cy Young kind of a year. So they're on the borderline of being able to get out of the bottom row. I think we all know they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're at least competitive. And I do see some future growing in Texas. Something to be proud of. At least. Next up, we got the Miami Marlins, number 24. They lost to the Blue Jays in 2 games, but back-to-back. But they actually did win this weekend against the Nationals, playing a little bit of spoiler role. But I think it's safe to say that with the 4 teams ahead of them, they're stapled in the bottom of this division, and their pitching's great, but they just can't get the offense going. And 24 is very much their spot. Number 23, potentially the best they've been all year. We got the Detroit Tigers. They went 2-0 against St. Louis early in the week, really capitalizing on St. Louis having a weak month overall. And then they had a good series against Houston over the weekend, 2-2. And they split the doubleheader yesterday. They win today, and they have a split series against the best team in baseball right now. So you got to give them some credit. Moving up, the Detroit Tigers, who are actually in a 3-way tie now in the Central for last place between the Twins and the Royals. I put them ahead of the Royals, but not quite ahead of the Twins just yet. Moving along at number 22, we got the Los Angeles Angels, who had a 1-win week against Tampa Bay, and they actually won today. They got swept by San Francisco in a 2-game set earlier in the week. Angels, they have Ohtani, so they get a little bit of a jump over everything else. Had they not had Ohtani right now, they would be in this bottom row because Trout's out and their pitching is pretty atrocious. Otherwise, without Ohtani, they're a struggle and a half. So 22, I think, is pretty generous. I think we know they're potentially the weakest team in this division with Texas right on their heels. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Moving along, number 21, we got the Minnesota Twins. They had a good week. 1-1 against Cincinnati, 2-1 against Cleveland over the weekend. I think that's back-to-back weeks now that Minnesota has won. Byron Buxton's out again, and it looks like a fracture in his hand of some sort. So overall, it's hard to say that the Twins are going to be a push for the playoffs, but I do think they're a team that's going to give you a run for money every time you're up in a series against them. Even if they play 600 baseball the rest of the way, it might be too little too late for them. So I have them here, like they have a shot. This is probably where the shots start to end. And we're going to start talking about teams that are still very much in the hunt. But the Twins, number 21, I think that makes a lot of sense. Number 20, we got Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati 1-1 against Minnesota, 2-2 against Atlanta. They were on a little bit of a streak last week before they went into San Diego and got swept in 4 games. So they're on the bottom side of the Central Division in the National League, but it's very much a battle in that division, and they have a shot at the very least. They've been very, very streaky this year. I'm looking for a little more consistency from the Reds if I'm going to move them up. Number 19, we got the Cardinals, 0-2 against Detroit, 1-3 against Pittsburgh. They're one of the most free-falling teams over the past couple of weeks. I think 3 weeks ago, if we date back, they were in this second row, and they were as high as 6 at one point. But how their season has changed, it's been a story of no offense and pitching just not being very consistent. Overall, not very good. I think number 19 is pretty good for them right now. Number 18, we got the Philadelphia Phillies, 0-2 against Washington, and then managed a 2-2 series against the injured, depleted Mets, which is the team they got to catch up on, and they only went 2-2. The bullpen's been atrocious, blowing saves left, right, and center. Phillies, we're going to see, as I put the rest of the teams up in this division, how tight it actually is. Even though they're 18th, they're very much in contention for playoffs. It's pretty funny with this division. Number 17, next team up in the division, 2-0 against the Phillies, and then went 2-2 against the Marlins over the weekend. They made up some ground, and they were up to 500 at one point this past week when we're doing our daily videos. Washington, they have a solid lineup. Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Kyle Schwarber's been super hot. And as we know, they do have a pretty decent rotation if everyone's on. So I know I talked about this. I've talked about it a couple times. Washington did have the exact same record about 3 or 4 weeks ago as they did when they won the World Series at the exact same time during the year. So keep an eye on them for them. They're definitely not out of it, and this division is going to heat up down the stretch. Number 16, we're sticking in the same division. 2-1 against the Mets, 2-2 against Cincinnati this week. They took care of the Mets, and that's the team they're going to have to win over. So I got them in second overall in the division. We're going to get to the Mets in a minute, and all these teams are interchangeable. It's going to be whoever comes hot in these next 3 months, whoever gets more consistent work from their bullpen, and I think that's going to be the big difference. But this is going to be an exciting division to watch. This National League East, definitely exciting. Number 15, and starting to get a little more credit. 1-1 against Colorado, 2-1 against the Chicago White Sox. They played 1.5 games today. This is probably a high right now for Seattle. Run differential, if you're looking at that, maybe not so strong, but their rotation has been pretty steady across the board. Chris Flexen's been a nice surprise, and their offense, they're getting offense from all sorts of guys throughout the whole order. Kalanick didn't work out, but we might see him come back up a little bit later if he gets back to his ways in AAA. But in this division, they have a shot. They're basically tied with the Yankees and all that in the wild card. We can't count them out yet. Last time I bumped them up a little bit. They had an atrocious week the following week, so let's hope that doesn't happen for Seattle out there. Next up, number 14, we got the New York Yankees, 2-1 against the Royals, who took a little bit of a beating. They used that team to bolster their record, but then they faced Boston this weekend. A very important series for them to really get back in this hunt, but now they're still like 5.5 games out. They got swept by Boston over this weekend. And there's definitely a lot of concerns with the Yankees right now. Their offense is not what it was in the past, and that's a big part of who their identity was. And without the starters that they had in the past and some injuries they're dealing with, the Yankees are on the outside looking in right now. Number 13, same division, American League East. We got the Toronto Blue Jays, 2-0 against Miami, 3-1 against Baltimore. While they didn't sweep Baltimore in either series they played, they did pick up some much-needed 5 wins, and they're, 7-3 over their last 10. So the Jays are finding a nice little groove here. They've addressed the bullpen, bringing some guys up. Their starters have started to come around, and they'll see Steven Matz coming back this week, coming off COVID, so that's good. Ross Stripling's been good. Blue Jays, they're very much in it, as well as the Yankees. They give them the edge over the Yankees right now because other than the one series that they just played, they've had the Yankees number for all the other series. So basically the same team right now. Number 12, coming off a little bit of a rough week and slowly falling down. The Chicago Cubs went 1-1 against Cleveland and then 1-3 against the Dodgers. So the Dodgers had a little bit of revenge after being swept by them earlier in the season. But the Cubs are in it. They're a couple games back now from Milwaukee, who's been on a 5-game win streak themselves. They were matching Milwaukee what they were doing for the longest time, but they've fallen off, and can't blame them. It feels like the Cubs are really coming out of the hardest stretch of schedule that they'll probably have all season. Like they had Giants, they had Padres twice, they had Dodgers twice, they had Milwaukee. So I suspect we're going to see a little bit of an easier schedule for the Cubs going forward, and we might be able to edge them back up should they perform up to what they can. Number 11, we got the Cleveland Indians, 1-1 against Cubs, 1-2 against Minnesota. I do leave them basically where they are, even though they didn't have the greatest week. They're in there. The teams ahead of them in their division haven't performed enough to really spread the gap, and overall their pitching's been pretty good this season. A little bit of under the radar team, not getting a lot of attention, so I want to keep my eye on them at least for another week before really think about making a drastic change with them. Moving along, at number 10, the Milwaukee Brewers, 2-1 against Arizona and 3-0 against Colorado. That's what you need to do if you're going to win the division. Definitely in the Central, it's wide open, and they took care of business this week against the teams they had to. It was about time, because before that they were kind of struggling with those teams, and when they were matching the Cubs and the Cubs were playing the much harder team, there's that. Overall, I think the pitching edge goes to Milwaukee, so I think they have a slight edge on the Cubs right now. However, it's hard to say based on schedule, what they've been on. So keep an eye on that, because that could very easily flip-flop. Moving along to number 9, we got the New York Mets, who went 1-2 against Atlanta, 2-2 against Philly. And as long as they can continue to play .500 baseball against their division, I like them in the top 10 and a very good chance. Well, .500 baseball against their division, they're going to make the playoffs. But once they're in the playoffs, I give them a good chance to make a run, because they have that kind of team. They're going to start having their players come back. Their pitching's going to start to come back. It's been atrocious, the injuries they've had to deal with. And considering the position they're in with the injuries they've had to deal with, got to give them a lot of credit. 9th for the Mets. Moving along, at number 8, Boston. Had a tough week this week. They went 1-2 against Tampa Bay, which was a big series in terms of the power rankings and where I'm kind of projecting teams to go in the future. But then they handled the Yankees 3-0, which is perfect. It cemented their spot in the top 8, as well as even moved them up a little bit. And to me, they're even closer to the teams ahead of them than they were before this week. So a lot of credit to Boston. They had a solid week, although it doesn't quite look like it. A lot of credit to be had to go from 9 to 8 in this situation. Number 7, we got the Oakland A's, 2-2 against Texas, 1-2 against San Francisco. And the reason I have them over Boston here is A, they beat Boston 2-1 earlier in the season, and these two teams meet this week coming up. So that's going to play a big role into how I see these two teams matching up. Right now, I got to give the A's a little bit of the edge. Talked about them having an easier schedule, but I still think with their rotation and their offense, they still have very good potential to be better than Boston. So number 6, got the LA Dodgers. They'd be higher, but they got swept by San Diego earlier in the week, so it's kind of hard when you go 0-3 against the team that was behind you going into the week. You're going to pretty much stay where you are. They handled the Cubs over the weekend, so that part at least is very good. 3-1 against the Cubs. Their offense is coming alive, putting up some big innings over the course of it with the Cubs. Just keep an eye. Like, as we know, this National League West is super stacked. Number 5, Chicago White Sox, 1-1 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Seattle. The White Sox have really kind of slowed down from the peak they were at. Kind of a little status quo, and I'm worried that if they continue at this rate, that Cleveland, they're snipping at their heels technically. And I don't want the White Sox to get too comfortable with the lead they had, because before you know it could be evaporated. They go on a losing streak. They do have to deal with some injuries as well. It was a quiet week. Maybe they didn't quite go into the week as hard as they wanted, but keep an eye on them because the consistency is what I want to see if they're going to get back into the top 4, 3, or whatever. Move on. Number 4 of the San Diego Padres. And as we know, Tatis Jr. is just carrying this team in all sorts of things. He's setting records like beyond belief. He's hitting home runs. San Diego is fully back. Exciting to watch. Their rotation has been awesome. If it wasn't those 3 teams ahead of them that I do have ahead of them being a little bit slightly better, and the issue with them being in the National League West, if you're not in first, you're definitely at a disadvantage in that division, going into a 1-game wild card against whoever doesn't win the division. Essentially, that's what's going to happen. So a little bit of damage there. So San Diego needs to make up some ground on San Francisco. Otherwise, they're going to be looking out. Number 3, we got Tampa Bay Rays, 2-1 against Boston, 2-1 against the Angels for a winning week. Pretty much status quo. If you go 6-6-6 every week, you're going to continue to climb. And the only thing hurting them right now is they don't have Tyler Glass now. But otherwise, their pitching has been great. Their offense is very much alive. Wander Franco, a little bit concerned there after his first game with them. He was monster. But then he kind of has fallen off since. So keep an eye on that. What are they going to do with him? He's going to be a big part of whether this team can go over the hump and win the World Series or not. Number 2, staying there from last week, we got the Houston Astros. They swept Baltimore, and then they went 2-2 against Detroit, which is fair because they had an 11-game winning streak. Let's give them some credit. They had a huge winning streak. Video about that will be coming out in the next 2 days or so because, like I said, if a team hits 10 wins, I'll make a video for them. So I want to go over breaking down what happened there. But Astros leading the league in offense, leading the league in starters, ERAs, that kind of stuff. So very much top in the American League right now. But we still have the champs, San Francisco Giants, 2-0 against the Angels in a 2-game series, and then went 2-1 against Oakland over the weekend. Can't really dethrone them. They've been number 1 seed for 3 of the past 4 weeks, and they just continue to play great baseball, great pitching, great hitting. Like, it's just been fun, exciting baseball watching them. They took care of the 7th place team 2-1. They beat the Angels. Gotta give them credit, and I'm going to keep them there until they give me a reason not to at this point. But there you have it. That's the rankings as of basically halfway through the season. So let me know what you guys think, what you have different. Where did I totally mess this up? And which ones am I just perfect on? Like, they're in the right exact spot. Let me know about that. Otherwise, hit down there, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 100. We're so close. Please, it really will help me and this channel grow. So otherwise, thanks for watching. We will see you for the next video.